So it is 2025. We have a new year, a new song. Thank you to Jesse Jace Thomas, who made that new theme song for me. This is an original theme song. This is something that I've wanted for a while. I've gone to a couple. So there's a whole epic story behind it. I think I did it in a C. McBee where I did a thing for work and I got a guy to make a rap song for me off Fiverr. And then I wanted, I want a new theme song for C. McBee because I don't want to find out that that music is being used somewhere else because it's not really then my song for my show. So I had one for C. McBee, and then for another whole year, I was like, I kind of need a song for Ninja News Japan. Ninja News Japan needs its own song. I was going to go on Fiverr, but then I realized, like, if I'm going to give money to someone I don't know, I should first give money to someone I do know, Jesse Jace Thomas. He's done albums you can find on Spotify. He's done music for video games, and now he's done a theme song for Ninja News Japan. Thank you, Jesse, for this amazing new theme song for Ninja News Japan. Chef's Kiss. For those of you listening to the only audio version, the sound was the chef's kiss me. Don't need to explain it. I think you know what a chef's kiss is. Let's get to the news. So new theme song, new transition beat. Very happy about that as well. This is an update to C. McBee episode 109, Murder in Japan 3, How to Raise a Murderer. So I was thinking, because I've done this, I did an experiment. I did some very serious, dark, true crime murder stories on C. McBee. Experiment to, do I say it well? Can I tell the story well? Can I be sensitive enough to it? And because the whole C. McBee and Ninja News Japan vibe is me talking, and it's often very light and very flippant. These are heavy topics, so I don't want to treat them too casually. But at the same time, I do want to make them entertaining. So I did 3 episodes of C. McBee, just doing murder stories in Japan, feeling out how I do it. So I actually think that last one I might release this week as a bonus Ninja News Japan. But if you want to know what's going on, C. McBee is essentially where I'm going to be experimenting with different formats and different things and different ideas. Just random stuff. And then Ninja News Japan has a format, but I think now I've gotten comfortable with the idea of how to present a very serious murder story. When Ninja News Japan started, I had a rule, no murder, because I can't really make fun of it. But there's an update to the story. So later this week, I will release the full episode from C. McBee explaining the whole case as it is up to now. This is the story of a woman who tracked down a guy, brought him to a love hotel, and decapitated him. And now the mother and father are being arrested for aiding this crime. The father has pled not guilty in his role in his daughter's beheading of a man. So full episode, C. McBee, episode 109. But when you listen to that episode, you'll have a full understanding of how complicit he is in this crime. He bought the saw that was used in the beheading. He bought the suitcase that the body was put in. He drove her to the place to help stalk the victim. So the murderer and the victim knew each other in this case, but she was hunting for him. She was looking for him. She's like, let's go to this club. Let's go to this place. I know he hangs out here. The father was the one driving her around. He drove her from the crime scene home. He also helped by simulating the murder. So she tied him up BDSM style. She covered his eyes with a blindfold and stuff like that. And then she practiced the action of slitting his throat. She practiced the action of stabbing him. She would say, how does this feel? How do you feel now? She did her research by watching horror movies. So she watched something in a horror movie and then she wanted to try it out real life, sort of a dry run with her father. Her father was complicit in this. He helped her practice. He helped her essentially train for this. He helped her get to and from the crime. He is about as complicit as someone gets. He's claiming he's not guilty because he didn't actually know what was going on. So I'll be interested to see, while he did not do anything directly connected to the actual physical action in the crime, he did everything leading up to it and he did everything helping cover it up. So I'm really interested to see, where does the Japanese court system land on this kind of story. The Prime Minister Ishiba. He is apparently a heavy smoker. I didn't know any of this. I don't look into the prime ministers. I don't actually take a great deal of interest in the prime ministers, much like the Japanese populace at large. He's finding being prime minister difficult because he doesn't have time to take breaks to smoke. So he admits that he only gets several cigarettes a day. He actually didn't admit this. I guess it was sort of his assistants and the people who work with him. They're saying like, this dude was like a couple packs a day. He's down to only a few cigarettes a day. In a weird way, actually good for you, but I'm sure that's because of the added stress of being prime minister means you don't get these breaks, and those breaks might be what he needs to survive. He told Parliament he will need a little time to quit smoking, which I found very interesting because he's saying to the government that I essentially promised to you, the government, that I will quit smoking. But is that something that the prime minister has to do? I remember Obama was a smoker and he had to like hide it from everybody. And it was like a really shameful thing. I was like, but as long as he's just smoking, which is perfectly legal, what is the actual problem? I guess they want to see the president as someone who doesn't do anything bad, which of course we all know is very unrealistic. Once the prime minister of Japan said that if he had to choose between drinking and smoking, he would definitely quit drinking. So between drinking and smoking, he would choose smoking every time because he loves smoking so much. His wife is a non-smoker. So in the prime minister's house, there is no smoking, and in every government building, smoking has been banned. So this is a guy who has to, during his prime ministerial duties, find a corner where he's allowed to smoke and then take a quick puff and then head back to work. And he's finding that really difficult, and it's really causing a strain on him. And I actually think if that's your biggest problem, being prime minister isn't that hard. So a guy woke up and he's like, I want to have a good day. So I'm going to hang out on my balcony, which I actually think is really nice. Japanese balconies don't get used enough. Japanese balconies tend to be used primarily for hanging laundry, which is too bad because I have a balcony outside my house. And if we put some table and the chairs out there, it'd be very nice to spend sort of spring, autumn evenings. This guy had sort of a similar feeling to mine, only that I would go out there, maybe have a cocktail, maybe drink something, maybe just read, maybe have some tea. Who knows? I'm just going to relax. That's what it's all about. This guy decided to add a little more stress into his and other people's lives. He might be claiming that this was to reduce his stress. That is a pretty common defense for negative actions in Japan. But he decided that the best thing he could do was to hang out his second story balcony, and then when someone walked by, throw a knife at him. The knife landed 4 to 5 meters in front of the man who he threw the knife at. So the victim, so nothing actually happened, but the victim stood there. Basically, you're walking down the street and then a knife comes flying from a building and lands 4 to 5 meters in front of you. So first of all, we're all very lucky that this guy was not like a movie ninja kind of thing where he's throwing and actually hitting anything. He threw it, missed about as badly as could. He was, technically anticipating, because when you try to shoot someone, you don't shoot at them, you shoot at like in front of them, so where they're going to be. He overcompensated and threw too far, so that you're walking down the street one day, and then just a knife sort of clangs in front of you, about 4 meters in front of you. What do? Well, you look up and you see the balcony where the guy's standing, probably looking back at you. And I just think of the awkward moment where you sort of lock eyes, and he's like, the unsaid question is, did you just throw a knife at me? And that guy's eyes are saying, yeah, I just threw a knife at you. Kind of sorry I missed. I don't know how I feel right now. And so the man pulls out his cell phone very slowly and dials the police and says, hey, I've just been a victim of attempted murder, very clumsy, very lame attempted murder, but attempted murder just the same. So the police show up and arrest this guy. He hasn't said why he has done this yet. I'm going to go ahead and bet that he didn't have a reason. He just gave in to his darker instincts. He just let those intrusive thoughts sort of come through and threw the knife without thinking. Japan has 2,820 homeless people. The Ministry of Health and Welfare has done a survey, which is interesting. So my first feeling was 2,820 homeless people in the entire country of Japan. They didn't actually survey Ishikawa because they had suffered from the earthquakes and stuff. So they were like, we don't know if these are people who don't have homes or their homes have been destroyed in something. So it wasn't really applicable. But overall, Japan has about less than 3,000 homeless people, which seems like a very small number. But this shows, let me get on my little soapbox and be a pundit for a minute. This is like social welfare, healthcare, all these things are taken care of. People with, honestly, maybe not a lot of money have found a way to survive and not be homeless at the same time. That's actually a very good thing. It sort of like speaks to these social programs. Anyways, the Ministry of Health and Welfare did a survey. 40% of the 2,820 homeless people surveyed said they were satisfied with their current living conditions. Part of the survey was where these people are staying. So 25.2% live in city parks. So they're city parks. They set up a tent or something like that. They do a little sort of thing. A village. I should have looked at this one more carefully for my language. 25.2% live in city parks. So they usually set up tents or coverings in city parks, and they live there almost in a little community. 23.8% live along the side of roads. So I'm assuming not in ditches, but maybe under bridges and stuff like that where they have a certain amount of cover. 22.6% live along rivers, so very similar to living alongside roads. Maybe they live close to bridges or under bridges to get some cover and then set up some kind of shelter. 6.2% live around train stations, which has got to be a lot harder because you're not really allowed to loiter or stay around train stations at night. So that might be where the police sort of push you along. You have to move along. That's why that number is a lot lower. But basically, city parks and along major thoroughfares are where almost all the homeless people in Japan live. 34.4% of the homeless people in Japan are 70 or older. So these are people who have hit retirement age for whatever reason, do not have a home to live in, but 40% of those people are saying they're satisfied with their living conditions. Like the tent I live in under this bridge along this river, I'm actually fine with that, which was a little shocking because you think about it, but then also you're living your life. There's been a couple of video games and stuff where they do like talk to homeless people. I guess that's not real. They're just talking about like the freedom they have. They're outside the system. Yeah, I don't know what to think about that. That's actually the biggest issue because I'm looking at this from someone who has never actually interacted with these people. So my opinions of what's going on there is based on media, and that's an unreliable source of information. So I shouldn't make any judgments. This is a good way to think about things for the rest of your life is, should I make this judgment or not? No, I don't actually have any accurate information. The rest of the information we got, 2,575, so that is almost all of them are men. 172 are women, and 73 of them were gender indeterminate, primarily because they were wearing like winter coverings, like so much clothes that it wasn't obvious to tell what their gender was. It's not that they wouldn't reveal it. It's just I guess the person didn't want to ask, are you a man or a woman, or how do you identify? Osaka had the most homeless people at 856. Tokyo was second, which is a big surprise because there's a massive amount of the population of Japan lives in Tokyo. So you would think a massive amount of the population of homeless people also live in Tokyo. That's not the case. They only have 624. 17.5% said they wanted to find a job and get an apartment, and 12% said they wanted to find an apartment and use welfare and then find some kind of light work to sustain themselves for the rest of their life in Japan. It was interesting that 40% of the homeless people in Japan surveyed, which was apparently a majority of the homeless people in Japan, were still satisfied with their living conditions. I would love to know why they were satisfied. Like, what was it about their life? This story has broken my brain. I would like to talk to some of the people and find out how their life is. Because maybe that's the bit I'm actually missing, is maybe they're living okay. Maybe they have minimal means or minimal desires, and that's why it's okay. Whereas I don't live that life. I have to have a PlayStation. A 58-year-old doctor. We have a couple doctor stories. A 58-year-old doctor. It seems in these late 50s is when the doctors really lose their shit. A 58-year-old doctor missed a call for a flight. So he wanted to get a flight from one city to another. It was called, like, please board now. He missed it. He walks up to the front. He says it was never called, which is a very doctor thing to say. Like, not, I missed the call. Is there any way I can get on board or get on the next flight or something? He claims he was never called. So he goes to the front desk where he was supposed to catch his flight. He starts berating the person working there. So the ground staff that's actually working there, of course, has no control over whether or not he heard it or showed up. You know it was called because it's probably an automated system for part of it. And then it's like, hey, last call, get on the airplane. He slaps the staff twice, completely unhinged. Like, why you think slapping someone, a service person, is going to be in any way beneficial to your situation? He probably said, like, get me on another plane. They're like, we can't do that right now. Didn't get exactly what I wanted right away. I'm a 58-year-old man. Do what I say or you get slapped. He was, therefore, immediately arrested. A 59-year-old doctor. So this is my point. I always talk about, like, every now and then the themes come through. The themes come through. It's not intentional on my part. Like, I start looking for 50-year-old doctor slapping people's stories. It's just like suddenly in my feed of news stories that I collect, there are multiple doctors and the word slap come up. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to stick those together and see if there's like a trend over the next couple of weeks. 59-year-old doctor was on the train. So he's standing on the train and there's a man seated around him who was coughing. So he dealt with it. And of course, doctors take the Hippocratic Oath. I will do no harm. He wants to deal with it. He's thought like back to like, oh, my bedside manner and I became a doctor because I care so deeply for humanity. He took that and threw all that out the window and said, if you cough again, I'll kill you. And to just put it like an exclamation point on that, he pulled out an ice pick. The man he was threatening, so he said, like, if you cough one more time, I'll kill you, and pointed an ice pick at him. The man he was threatening, who was sitting down, was a member of the Japanese military, the self-defense force, who then, and then in quotes, detained him. So I'm assuming just grabbed the ice pick and then threw him to the ground, held him until the police arrived, and then said, this dude just pulled an ice pick out, threatened to kill me. Please deal with that. The man, the doctor, so again, highly educated person who has, we tend to esteem doctors as being smart, but the more I see about the way doctors behave, at least in Japan, I think a lot of them, they might be good doctors, but that doesn't mean they actually understand the rest of the world. The God complex maybe comes into play here. Like, I can do whatever I want, but you can't go threaten military dudes and then expect to just like walk away with no problems. No claim that he was hurt, but he was detained. So this is an athletic person who's in the military versus a doctor who probably walks around and tells people to do stuff all the time. Police arrived. He was arrested. He admits to taking out the ice pick, but to nothing else. So he's saying, yes, I was on the train. No, I did not tell the man to stop coughing. No, I did not threaten to murder him. I just took out my ice pick to admire it for a little while. As you do when you're on the train, you're bored, you have time, you take out your ice pick, you admire the sharp edge, the long sort of shaft, you sort of stroke it a little bit. This is what people do on the train. That was about to get way worse. I'll just stop right there. So I think he's actually undermined his own argument by the very fact that he admitted that he has been carrying an ice pick with him, because who carries an ice pick with him? Doctors, certainly not. If he had a syringe or a scalpel in his pocket, while that would still be a little weird and shaky and like, he could say, oh yes, I had this scalpel at work. I put a cover on it or something and I just put it in my pocket and then forgot it was in my pocket. Still probably not believable, but far more likely than I'm a doctor at a hospital or I'm a doctor at home and I put an ice pick in my pocket just to, hang out and be cool. And then I got on the train, and while I was on the train, I was just like bored. So I was like, let's take a look at the ice pick that I'm carrying with me. Obviously, he did threaten this guy. He did threaten him with the ice pick. I think if you don't say anything, let's take away like the verbal threat of murder. If you and I were standing on a train and I took out an ice pick and I just like held it or pointed at you, that is inherently threatening. So I think his counter argument that he didn't say anything, still the underlying feeling there is, guy was coughing, you were clearly annoyed, you took out an ice pick, there is an unspoken threat, and that is what he should be arrested for, because it's exactly the same as saying it out loud. 54-year-old man. Our 50-year-old man. I'm 52. And I'm like, again, I've said this before. We went through a whole summer of 50-plus-year-old men doing the weirdest sexual crimes ever. Now it's 50-year-old men just being unhinged. Like we seem to have shifted from it's a sex thing to just like I'm an angry, violent old man. This guy wasn't angry or violent, but he still was expressing those tendencies is how I feel about it. A 54-year-old man had a hobby. That's a good thing for a 50-year-old man. You're
only a few more years before you go bananas. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Also true. I mean, this is now my concern. I'm now conscious of my behavior. Is my behavior going to just like click, off I go? Now I'm like, is it a weird sex crime? I'm assuming I would lean towards violence. Having practiced judo my whole life, violence would be my more natural tendency. I'm wondering when and where it's going to happen. The train is a high stress situation. It's always when you're in your worst mood, you get on the train, but it's also like when you're happy. So you are on the train for your peaks and troughs, your valleys, not troughs. But like, you know what I mean? Like if you're in your worst moment, you probably still have to get on the train and go home, and then someone annoys you. I can see that happening. But so far, my hobby is sit in this room and make content, and which is, the movie reviews and podcasts and stuff like that. It's very hard for me to hurt someone else from here. And I think that might be the key to me not getting arrested between now and sort of, these guys all seems to be in their 50s. So it seems like past 60, it happens a lot less. So if I can get through the next 8 to 10 years in this room, basically never leaving, I think I'm not going to get arrested. But let's get on to our 54-year-old man. He has a hobby, just like I have a hobby, and that takes up my time, and it means I don't get into trouble with other things. This guy chose the wrong hobby. I think that's what we're really going to learn from this. My hobby is make content. Maybe people don't like the content. Maybe people do like the content. That's fine. No one gets hurt either way. He likes building things. He likes working with his hands. Very admirable. I think it's really cool when someone can build something from scratch, and he's decided, well, I'm technically skilled. I know how to make things. I'm going to make weapons that are illegal in Japan. And that's the first problem. He was arrested because he had a fully functional pen that shot a gun that was lethal to a human being. So it had enough capacity or power that you could shoot the pen at a person and it would most likely kill that person. The police got an anonymous tip. And as I said in our last episode, if you're going to do illegal, weird, bad things, you have to keep the people around you happy. So you can't be like off-putting and weird and unpleasant if you're going to commit crimes or do bad things, because the anonymous tips are the ones that are getting these people in trouble lately. These anonymous tips to government lines or the police and stuff are the ones that are getting these guys arrested. So this guy, I don't know, he had been making these things for a while. We will see in a minute because of the volume of stuff he had. No one said anything. So he must have pissed someone off at some point. And that person decided to call the police, anonymous tip. And then they show up at his house. They're like, hey, do you have a gun pen? He's like, sure, I do. And he holds it up and shows it to him. I don't know if that's how it happened. They didn't actually say how he was arrested. He actually had a YouTube channel where he was showing off the things he'd made, like the anti-tank gun he built himself. Now, it's a bit of an exaggeration. It is a replica of a World War II anti-tank gun. It has a big shield and a big cannon. It actually has wheels, and it's like has like a trailer hitch, so it connects to a truck or something else to get it around. It looks exactly like a miniature version of an anti-tank thing. But when I say miniature, I mean like a 1:4 scale. So it would go up to like my shins or my hip. It's very hard to see because I just watched it on video. But he was using it indoor and he was shooting Rubik's Cube. So it was essentially a really big, powerful compressed air gun. But if you put something sharp in there, you have a gun that could kill a human being, which is, again, illegal in Japan. So he had his YouTube channel where he's showing this off shooting a stack of Rubik's Cubes, which doesn't seem very threatening until, again, you really take those extra steps to what could he do if he modified this even further. The police come and search his house. They find his workshop where he has 90 other firearms. Now, most of these look like guns, but I'm assuming they're actually air guns because he said 16 of these weapons violate the firearm control law. So he's probably got things that look like real guns that are not real guns. They're like air guns or they make noise or something like that. He's got other things he's made himself, or he's taken the air guns and modified them so they shoot actual stuff, maybe not just pellets or something like that. But because he was making these things himself, he's also in violation of the weapon manufacturing law.
Rule 1, don't do crime. Rule 2, don't talk about or feel yourself doing a crime. Rule 3, don't post about said crimes on the internet.
Fully agree with. Your dude did break all three. The problem is these guys do this. They think, wouldn't it be cool for everyone to see the gun I made at home? I'm going to film it and put it on YouTube and be really popular. And then someone's going to see. It actually could have been someone who didn't know him, who wasn't annoyed with him, who just saw, here's a Japanese dude making a cannon at home. I think this is wrong and call the police. But again, don't film it. When we went through it was like all the harassment streamers and they were filming themselves and then they all got arrested. That was always like, dude, if you're harassing people, that's bad, but filming it and putting it online, that's just guaranteed you're going to get arrested. But because he was building these, he's also in violation of the weapon manufacturing law, which I'm actually betting is more serious than just having, possessing is bad, manufacturing is worse. This is like trafficking drugs is bad, producing and trafficking drugs is worse. When he was arrested, he said, I should have thrown it away if I had known this would happen. which I guess all I can say is correct.